How's it going now?
Yo.
Dave, people are saying there's a family resemblance. Hey, can you all hold up Dave's book? If you. All right. Yeah, I just want to get a little picture here. Woo! Look at that. Keep going. Dave, did you choose that color for your cover? Thank you. Amazing what a crowd of people will do if you yell at no microphone. So I am Sam Berry, and I'm here to introduce my brother Dave Berry, and I'm also here because I work here. That's just a coincidence. And I want to, and it happens that some of my colleagues from the band, the Rock Bottom Remainders, you ever heard of the Rock Bottom Remainders? Oh, yeah. There are a couple of Remainders here. Of course, Dave, or there are a few, Dave and myself, and Amy Tan is here too. Rhythm dominatrix is what she said. Yeah. And so I want to thank you for being here, for supporting this great independent bookstore. It really matters a lot, and thanks for keeping this place thriving as it is. It's so great to have you. I just want to give you a little taste of what the Remainders sound like. So, yeah, so we're going to sing, Dave and I are going to sing together now. Want to sing? No. Never mind that idea. I didn't ask you about that ahead of time. Over the years, a lot of people have asked me what it's like to be Dave's brother, and usually I just say it's a little too difficult to talk about. Seriously, Dave is a great brother. Dave and my brother Phil, wonderful brothers, and I love them so much, and we've been through a lot together and only bonded the more. I'm really so happy to have these guys as brothers. Phil is in Atlanta right now, but we'll be seeing him soon. I want to just mention a few things about Dave's career. I went and looked on Wikipedia, and what I found out is that, and I didn't know this, Dave, but Dave has written a whole lot of books. Really, a lot of books. I mean, it's like, one of the booksellers here was piling them up over there, and he says, it's kind of obnoxious how many books your brother has written. So have a look at them and buy them, because Dave's got to put his child through college. And, I think a lot of them are funny books, is what I've noticed about them. And considering the handicap of having been the son of a Presbyterian minister, I think that's pretty amazing. Dave, I also found something else out when I was on Wikipedia. Apparently, you had something to do with the Looney Tunes cartoon Pre-Hysterical Hair. Did you know that? If you Google yourself, I don't think Dave did have anything to do with that. So at that point, I realized that maybe Google was letting me down. And maybe it would just be better to have Dave come up here and tell you about this book he's just written. So I give you Dave Berry.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Elaine Petrocelli and everybody else at Book Passages. What a wonderful bookstore. And hold on.
Hey Dave, can I show up the shirt?
Huh?
I forgot to show up the shirt.
That's okay. So there's one other member of the Rock Bottom Remainders here that Sam didn't introduce. It's Lou DiMatteo, who's Amy Tan's husband. Lou, stand up. Well, I have to tell you my favorite all-time. Thank you, Lou. You can sit down. We sometimes do a song that Amy sings called "Leader of the Pack," which is the song about a tragedy where this girl in high school falls in love with this motorcycle gang guy, and then she breaks up with him because her parents don't like him, and he rides off into a rainstorm, and there's a horrible crash. And Amy sings it, and Amy, never a dry set of underpants in the house. And Amy does it. But we do a very dramatic version of it, and in that version, Lou plays the part of the leader of the pack. And he dresses up in leathers, which for some reason he owns a set of. None of my business. And he does it very dramatic. And then when the crash comes, Lou used to dive onto the stage very dramatically, fall down, and it was So we're doing that song in New York City. This is maybe 10 years ago. And Lou dives to the ground, and it was a really excellent dive, an unusually good one. Very dramatic. And I thought, well, you know, the crowd is laughing. I thought, well, I'll add a little to the humor here. I'm going to go over and kick Lou while he's down. So I go over and kick him. And, you know, ha ha, big laugh. And then Stephen King, who's playing rhythm guitar, thought that was a funny idea also. So he went over and kicked Lou. So the two of us are kicking Lou on the ground. And then, you know, we finish the song, do a couple of other songs. And then we get off the stage, and we're looking around and say, where's Lou? And they said, at the hospital. When he dove to the stage, he broke it was your collarbone, yeah. And he was in incredible pain lying there while Stephen and I were kicking him. Yeah.
15 minutes of fame.
Yeah. And what did you say? It was like if you had to file, he didn't sue us, thank God.
I said you couldn't ask for a better class of defendant.
Then, yeah, couldn't ask for a better class of defendant than Dave Barry and Stephen King. Anyway, Lou finished the tour, continuing to be the leader of the pack, wearing a sling. So that was pretty good.
No more crap.
No, yeah, Lou needs it. All right, so I'm going to talk a little about my book. Then I'll be happy to take questions. It's a book of essays on a variety of topics, vaguely related to happiness, but not always. You know, one of them early on concerns something that actually makes me quite unhappy, which is that it's a letter to my daughter, Sophie, who's 15. And the fact that she's 15 means the state of Florida now thinks that she can get a learner's permit to drive. And this is, the letter begins, Dear Sophie, so you're about to start driving. How exciting. I'm going to kill myself. And I say that because Florida, I tell Sophie, just because Florida thinks you can drive, that doesn't mean you can drive. As far as I can tell, there's nobody in the state of Florida doesn't think can drive. I live in Miami, which is a particularly bad example of driving. My joke is when I first got there, I thought nobody here knows the law. I now realize everybody in Miami is driving according to the law of his or her individual country of origin. Many different styles of driving. Some countries apparently traditional put on your left turn signal first thing in the morning. Then in addition to those people, we have a lot of senior citizens, a lot of retirees. A lot of people from the New York metropolitan area living in South Florida, and they're fine people, but I don't think they drove much most of their lives. I think they took public transportation. Then they retired. Then they lost the vast majority of their sight and hearing. Then they moved to Florida to get driver's license. Down there, come with your Happy Meal. So we have a lot of less awareness. And this is, I know you think I'm exaggerating. I am not. This is an absolutely true thing. A lot of seniors drive by what I call the seeing eye wife system. I'm not kidding. It's a couple driving. The man drives because the man drives. But the man can no longer see. He's really only dimly aware of what's going on out there beyond the windshield. And let's be honest, that's a critical piece of information to have while you're driving. And the wife sits next to him and she sees for him. And she'll go like, the arrow's green, it's green, no, it's yellow, no, no. So that's the environment that the state of Florida is about to send my daughter out into driving. And I point out to her that, okay, you've got a lot of different people, a lot of different cultures. You got the senior, a lot of the seniors, and you've got the teenagers, which is Sophie is one of. And I say, in no all due respect, you're an idiot. Teenagers are idiots when they drive, and I know this because I was one. But I had a safety feature that my daughter will not have, which is when I was 16, when I got my license in New York State, I drove my mom's 1961 Plymouth Valiant station wagon, the safest car ever made, because it was the slowest car ever made. It reached its top speed on the assembly line. It had the same acceleration characteristics as a fire hydrant. You could step down on the accelerator all the way on the Valiant, and it would not start moving for several days. A mature tree could get out of the way of the Valiant. So if my daughter were driving a Valiant, I'd be cool with it. But she's not. She's going to be driving a real car. So I the problem is that she's going to read the Florida State Driver's Manual that they require you to pass a test based on it, and it's a tissue of lies. It's very inaccurate. For example, the Florida State Driver's Manual says that if there is no marked speed limit, you should go 35 miles an hour. You do that in Miami and you will be taking small arms fire, okay? And I will be one of the people shooting at you. Okay? So I have in the book a Q&A, I call it a reality-based Florida driver's Q&A, designed to help Sophie understand how it actually will work on the roads of Florida, as opposed to how the Florida driver's manual says. I'll give you just a couple of Q's and A's. Q, how is the turn signal used in Florida? A, it is used to indicate to other motorists that you do not realize your turn signal is blinking. Q, can it also be used to signal your intention to turn or change lanes? A, interesting. Nobody has ever tried that. Q, what is the best kind of food to eat while driving? A, any food such as a sandwich, turkey leg, oyster, or ding dong that can be eaten one-handed, so you still have a hand free for texting. Q, what if an emergency situation arises that might require me to operate the steering wheel? A, use your forehead to honk the horn until the emergency has passed. Q, my car's engine seems to have stopped, and I hear a burbling noise. What could be causing this? A, are you a senior citizen? Q, yes. A, you have driven into a swimming pool. Q, I've had a few drinks. How can I tell if I should drive? A, take this simple test. Are you wearing your underpants on your head? Q, not my underpants, no. A, and you are good to go. I have an essay in here. It's called Bite Me, David Beckham. And it is an essay about, well, a variety of things, but mainly about my own insecurity. You know, I think your image of yourself is formed when you're young. And it sort of sticks with you the rest of your life. However you felt when you were like in middle school, high school, when you really started wanting the other gender to be attracted to you, or at least that was the gender I was interested in. And my formative years were not great ones in that sense. My image of myself is poor to this day, and I will show you why. This is my high school yearbook photograph. This is from the Pleasantville High School class of 1965. This is not a bad day, okay? That was as good as I could look in 1965. Notice the eyeglasses. I call them the "You Will Die a Virgin" model eyeglasses. Notice the hairstyle, which is the key here. My dad cut my hair. Sam will back me up on this. Our dad, he was a Presbyterian minister, a wonderful man. They do not train them in hair cutting. They train them. My dad obtained a set of clippers at a drugstore, and I know that you know, we want to get assault rifles out of the hands of Americans, but first we got to take away the electric clippers, okay? Because this is what happens. So I didn't look great to begin with, and I had my dad cutting my hair. So I was like basically a little dweeby guy who had very little luck with girls. And I'm going to read a little passage about that. My point is that in high school I was not physically attractive to the opposite sex, namely girls. But Dave, I hear you remarking, looks aren't everything. There are plenty of other qualities besides cuteness that girls look for in boys. Good point. And when I say good point, I mean you are a stupid idiot. The girls at Pleasantville High School were not interested in, quote, plenty of other qualities besides cuteness. I know this because I had other qualities besides cuteness. Sarcasm, for example. I had a black belt in sarcasm. I went entire years without ever saying anything that was not basically the opposite of what I actually thought. Also, I could make realistic farting sounds with my hands. These are just two of the many qualities other than cuteness I had in high school. None of them impressed girls. You will never hear a high school girl say about a boy in a dreamy voice, "He's so sarcastic." So okay, that was my image of myself, and then fast forward to now, much later, you'd think I'd be secure. I'm not. I'm still, that in my mind, this is me. So here's the thing. David Beckham, who is widely considered to be a very handsome man, very hot guy, athletic, you know. David Beckham is trying to bring a Major League Soccer team to Miami. And so he's wooing the city. He's wooing the politicians, he's wooing the public. You go outside and David Beckham is mowing your lawn, you know. He's all around the city trying to get, and he's wooing the media. And it happens that the #1 soccer writer of the Miami Herald is my wife, Michelle Kaufman. She's a very good sports writer and she covers soccer. And so she is the most influential soccer writer. So David Beckham is wooing my wife. I'm not kidding. He sees her, he gives her a big hug and a kiss. And he, Michelle, how have you been? You know, and they arrange meetings between my wife and his people. Sent her an email once that said, David would like to schedule a one-on-one with you. And she's always telling me it's, you know, she's telling me it's nothing. She's lying. And the worst part is she tells me he's really a nice guy, which is the last thing you want to hear. So anyway, so bite me, David Beckham. I have an essay called "The Real Madman," which has actually gotten more attention, I think, than any other of the essays in this book so far. And it's about the generation before mine, the greatest generation. I'm a baby boomer. I was born in 1947. And my parents were, Sam's parents and my parents they're from the Midwest. They grew up in the Depression. My mom was actually born in a sod hut, believe it or not. So they went through the Depression, they went through World War II. That generation, the generation that they depict in the TV show Mad Men. And when I started to see that show, which I'm a big fan of, and they're always smoking and drinking on the show and doing, and I'm thinking like that. When I think back, my parents, even though this isn't supposed to the way it was supposed to work out, my parents had more fun than I did. When I think about it, now that I'm old, they had more fun. I had fun for a while in the 60s, and then when I became a parent, like many baby boomers, I sort of stopped having fun and started parenting, which was a verb that my parents never would have used, where you suddenly devote your life, the way the boomers do, to making everything perfect for their kids and removing all the obstacles and worrying about all the things that could happen to your kids and make sure your kid is wearing a helmet, and if your kid goes trick-or-treating, you're following your kid around in case somebody does something terrible, like give your child an apple, God forbid, you know. And that's sort of this worry mode that we got into, because like baby boomers do everything, we act as though no one ever had kids before us, and we have to do it just perfectly, and we're worried. And my parents were not like that at all. They were like good parents, but I don't think they didn't worry the way, they didn't obsess the way we did. My parents had fun. Well into their 40s. I grew up in this little town when I wouldn't think it's even possible. In Armonk, New York, where we grew up, it's a suburban town. The dads rode the train to New York City. A lot of my parents' friends were advertising executives. These people partied. They smoked, they drank alcohol, they ate gluten. Freely. Yeah, you want to do some gluten, you know? And they had these wonderful parties that would never occur, I don't think, to my generation to have. They had every Friday and Saturday in Armonk, this party would sort of rotate from house to house depending on the week, and just big bashes, and the men would come in suits and ties, the women wore dresses, they would have music, they would do scavenger hunts, they would do charades, they would put on skits, they did all this fun stuff. And only much later did I realize how much fun they were having. As somebody put it to me once, we worried about whether our kids are having fun, and our parents worried about whether they were having fun. You know? And I'll never forget just an illustration of the kind of party they used to have. My brother Phil. We had a party at the house one night, went late, as they often did. Next morning, my brother Phil comes into my bedroom and goes, "There's 2 giant bees in the living room." And I'm thinking he means insects, so I go in the living room, and there are 2 letter B's, made of wood, like this tall, painted gold. As it happens, Armonk is the world headquarters of the IBM Corporation, which was building this giant corporate headquarters, and they had these big signs, IBM. My parents the night before had a scavenger hunt. And apparently one of the items was to get the bee from the IBM sign. So these grown-ups, who like stockbrokers, where everyone got the IBM sign, brought it back to our house, and we had these bees. You know, if there's anybody here from the IBM Corporation, I'm sorry. But so anyway, it was just a different kind of world. I have an essay about Brazil. As I said, my wife is a soccer writer. She goes to the World Cup every 4 years, and last year it was in Brazil. And my daughter, Sophie, and I went down to join her in Brazil. And Sophie's very interested in soccer because my daughter plays travel soccer. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the way it works is every weekend, if your child plays travel soccer, you get in a car and you drive 200 miles to play another team that has also driven 200 miles, sometimes starting at the same place you did. But the rule is you have to drive a long way or it's not travel soccer. And you have to go someplace where it's raining really hard. That's the other rule of travel soccer. If you ever want to end the drought here, you get serious about ending the drought here in California, schedule my daughter's soccer team. You will rain until you beg it to stop. So anyway, she's into soccer and I'm into soccer. So we went to the World Cup in Brazil. And when I told people in Miami that we were going to Brazil, a lot of Miamians have visited Brazil or in fact Brazilian, everybody had the same reaction, which was, Brazil is a beautiful country. Do not wear jewelry. Do not show any money. Do not hold your phone because you'll be robbed at knife point. Everybody said, the guidebooks say this. It was just universal. So like, I was really nervous. So I purchased all these garments with secret places where you don't really want to have anything, let alone money. And so I was covered with money when I got to Brazil. And I had a stash. They tell you to do this. Have a little stash of money to give to the robber when he drops your knife point, which is going to happen. Everybody's like, it's the number one industry in Brazil, robbing Americans at knife point. So we get there, and I have I'm ready. I've got the money. If anybody had come near me, I would have given them the money. If a dog had run toward me, I would have thrown the money at the dog. None of that ever happened. We were in Brazil for quite a while, never had a problem. We were not always in the greatest neighborhoods. They were the sweetest people in the world. Brazil is a lovely country. The people are lovely. Never a problem. Sophie and I, it became a joke, a running joke with us after a while. Like, we thought, if you are a young, like say, college graduate looking to make some money, go to Brazil and rob American tourists. They've got the money and they will give it to you. They're reading the same guidebooks I have, you know. Just show them a knife, or show them a receipt for a knife. They'll give you the money. There's an essay in the book. It's called "Everything I Know About Home Ownership I Learned from Johnny Carson," and this is based on a true anecdote. Back in the early '80s, I had just written my first couple of humor books, and one of them was called "The Taming of the Screw." It was a parody of a do-it-yourself book. And I had never been on a book tour. I had never been on radio talking about a book. I'd never been on television. Okay, and somehow this little humor book ended up in the hands of a woman named Shirley Wood, who was a legendary producer for The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And I get this phone call. I'm at home one day, and this woman identifies herself as Shirley Wood and she says, "I got your book." Shirley was a smoker. She was a member of my parents' generation. She said, "I got your book. It's funny. Are you funny?" And she asked me all these questions. You know, she decides I could be on the show. So they flew me to LA. I've never been on television. I get flown to LA to be on The Tonight Show, and they take me to the studio, and there's the dressing rooms, and there's my name, Dave Barry, and next to it the Pointer Sisters, and next to it Dick Cavett, and that was the lineup for I was like, whoa, big time. So I'm sitting in the dressing room. I don't have to dress because I'm just wearing the same clothes I wore on the plane. And finally Shirley Wood comes in and goes, "You remember what we talked about?" "Yeah." So drink this, and she gives me a glass of wine, not a wine glass, but like a water glass, like a lot of wine. "Drink this." And so I drink the whole thing, and I'm ready to go on The Tonight Show. And I go out. It's the first time ever on television. I'm on The Tonight Show, you know, and it's great. I did this 7 minutes at the end of the show. It used to be called the author spot, when they would have an author on at the end of the show if there was time. And it went great. It was fabulous, and everybody laughed, and Johnny Carson was great. And I thought, wow, television is easy, you know. Now, thousands of bad interviews later, I know the reason it was easy is because I was being interviewed by Johnny Carson, who could make Hitler look funny. So anyway, so that's my. But what led to this particular essay is at the end of the interview, when the microphone is off, and the camera goes off, Johnny Carson, and we're still sitting there and the band is playing, we're just on the set, just him and me. He lights a cigarette, and he turns to me and goes, this is the only conversation, it wasn't really a conversation, the only thing he said to me that was not on the air. He goes, I used to do it yourself. You can't do shit yourself. So that was Johnny Carson. And he's right. He's right. I've been a homeowner now for decades, and you can't do shit yourself for the most part. A lot of us think we can, and few people have the ability to actually repair things when they break or build things that don't look ridiculous. I do not have that ability. Many people do not have that ability. Most of us use what I call the guy with the truck system of fixing things, which is when something breaks, you call a man with a truck who comes to your house, and he's much more masculine than I am. And what makes it worse is I work at home, and I'm a humor writer, so like typically what I'm doing is looking at a TV, I mean not a TV, a computer screen that's showing something like a Japanese game show where men in their underpants are falling into vats of mud, you know? To me that's research, that's what I'm doing, you know? But it doesn't look like work to a guy with the truck, you know? You could put a roof on your house if you had to. So typically what happens, if something breaks, I call the guy, he comes into my office, and there I'm looking, there's guys with their underpants on and saying, you know. And first he always has a question, which I hate. He's like, I don't know the answer. Whatever it is, if I knew the answer, I wouldn't have called the guy with the truck. You know, he'll say, oh, Mr. Barrett, do you know where your deframbulation module is? I don't know where it is, but it should be near the Boolean overpass now. So, you know, I don't know, so, you know, he looks at the underpants and off he goes. Gone for a while, checking it out. Then he comes back, and this is the worst part of the guy with the truck ritual, and it's always the same. And if you have a house, you know exactly what I'm about to tell you. He always wants to show you something. And you never want to see it, all right? Because it's never good. It's like you always go like, see this, Mr. Barry? He never says, see this, Mr. Barry? That's exactly the way that should look. Okay? That's not going to cost you a nickel. No, never. It's always something that's wrong, it's going to be very expensive, and whoever did it was an idiot. And I always say, yeah, whoever did it probably came here in a truck. You know, I don't say that. So anyway, but people still believe that they can do things themselves. And the reason they believe that is we have these large institutions devoted to convincing them they can. I'm referring here to like Home Depot, which runs these ads on TV. You've seen the ads, like the cheerful homeowner couple. They're in Home Depot and they're looking at tile samples. And then there's like a 5-second montage of them wearing safety glasses and screwing in a screw. And then boom, there's a whole new kitchen. You know? No, that is not the way it happens in the real world. So I proposed in my book a company that would be counter to, that would be an antidote to Home Depot. It's called reality-based hardware. And the reality-based hardware store would have these employees who were specially trained so that when you went in and said you wanted to do a do-it-yourself project, the reality-based hardware employees would talk you out of it. And I have a typical dialogue between the employee and a homeowner. The homeowner comes in and says, I want to install a ceiling fan. Employee, really? Homeowner, yes. Employee, you want to install a machine with long, sharp blades whirling at high speeds directly over the heads of live human beings. Homeowner, well, yes. Employee, I see. And do you have any particular training in this, expertise in this area? Any training in the field of ceiling fan installation? Homeowner, no, not in ceiling fan installation per se. Employee, in what then? Homeowner, I'm a dentist. Employee, I see. And would you be comfortable having a professional ceiling fan installer give you a root canal? Homeowner, well, no, but that's a different. Employee, I'd like you to take a look at this photograph of a recent do-it-yourself ceiling fan installation. Homeowner, my God, is that? Employee, yes. His hand. It landed 8 feet away. I have an essay about a trip I went to Russia last fall with Ridley Pearson, who's also in the Rock Bottom Remainers, a friend of mine and a co-author of some books for young adults he and I wrote. And we went to Russia as part of a program by the State Department, our State Department, where they send authors to Russia in hopes of improving relations between the two nations. So we see how that's working out. Let's hope to God they don't send Ridley and me to Iran. So anyway, and it was a little unnerving. They told us that we would be under surveillance, and we're pretty sure we were. They were watching us, including even sometimes in our hotel rooms. And we had a couple of little confrontations, a lot of tension between us and the Russians right now. Overall, though, it was interesting and at times very enjoyable. We did a lot of talks to university students and library groups, and it's just people just interested in meeting American authors. And it was interesting, but it was also a little difficult because most of the time we were speaking through interpreters, which slows it down and makes humor a little more difficult to do. Also, I had a hard time explaining what I did. Then nobody knew who I was, obviously. And they don't really, their literature is more serious than ours. They don't really have somebody like me over there that's not in prison, as far as I know. And so we were trying to explain, and we had slides to help them kind of see what we do. And I was trying to show them the kinds of columns that I write. And I had one slide, it's an old story I've told a million times about embarrassing my children. And I once picked my son up at middle school in the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, which was hideously embarrassing to him, a lot of fun for me. And so I had a photograph of that. It's a big slide, and there's the Wienermobile with me with my arm out the window, and Rob standing there looking really like stunned that his dad would do such a thing. And so I'm trying to explain to the Russians what this is about. They don't have the Wienermobile over there. So I'm talking through the interpreter. This group of Russians are looking at this, me and this giant hot dog, and this puzzled look on their face. And I know what they're thinking. They're thinking, how the hell did we lose the Cold War? But anyway, it was interesting. It was fun. The one piece of advice I have for you, travel advice, if you go to Russia, do not eat the Mexican food. We did. In Moscow, one night, there was a Mexican restaurant. It was the closest to our hotel, so that's where we went, which was a huge mistake. I ate what I later came to believe was a weaponized chimichanga. And I don't want to get too explicit, but I developed a case of global thermonuclear diarrhea. And if there were surveillance cameras in my hotel room, whoever was watching them will need psychotherapy for the next years to come. One last, I'm skipping over, there's one last essay I'll discuss quickly. It's a letter to my grandson. I wrote a letter to my grandson. I became a grandfather last spring. My son Rob married a woman and they had a baby, but it's like the way it usually works. Anyway, Dylan Maxwell Berry is, and I'm his grandfather, and I, you picture what when you realize you're going to be a grandparent, what your activities are going to be with your grandchild. And I don't know, I didn't picture what ended up being the first activity that I did with him, which was his bris. My son married a Jewish woman. I did too. My wife is Jewish. She's Cuban Jewish. Juban. That is what they call themselves. My joke is they didn't come on rafts. They parted the Caribbean. But like me, my son married a Jewish woman, and in the Jewish tradition, they have this thing called the bris, which on the 8th day of a male child's life, he is circumcised, and then there are deli platters. Sometimes on the same surface. So that I was chosen, given the honor, and I was assured it was a big honor, of being the sandek, which is the person who holds the baby's legs, while the moil, which is the Hebrew word for snipper, does the circumcision. So that was my first grandparent-grandchild experience. And I was curious about it, why they do that. And, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Jewish religion, but I really don't get the bris. I don't get it. I mean, circumcision, fine. Doing it that way, I don't get. So I looked it up in the Old Testament, which is online. A miracle, if you think about it. Because they didn't have the internet back then. So I look it up, and it's very clearly spelled out. When Abraham, who was the patriarch of the Jewish people, was 99 years old, God came to him, which is never a good thing in the Bible. I mean, it's a lot like when the truck guy comes to show you something, okay? Because it's never for, God never comes to you for a fun reason. God never says, hey, I just turned Lake Erie into beer, you know? It's always like God wants you to smite somebody, or God wants you to sacrifice somebody, or God wants you to build an ark, or God wants you to collect 300 goats and do something. I don't know. God has a bee in his bonnet, and you better do what he's, because it's God, you know? So God comes to Abraham, this 99-year-old man, and he says, we're going to have a covenant between me and you and all your offspring, and you're under this covenant, you will be the forefather of kings, you will get the land of Canaan, which is the biblical term for what we now call Long Island. But then God says, remember he's talking to a 99-year-old man, as a token of our covenant, to seal the deal, okay? I want you to circumcise yourself and all the male members of your household and all your progeny, okay? That's what he wants this 99-year-old man to do. And I'm like, then why couldn't they just shake hands? And speaking of shaking hands, how would you like to be a member of the household when this 99-year-old guy comes towards you with a knife? Because guess what God told me to do? So anyway, that was my, and you know, I pictured we would go fishing or something. Instead, that was what we did. That was our first. And Dylan took it like a man. I cried like a baby. But anyway, so anyway, I wrote in the book, I end with a letter of the wisdom that I've been, I think like I should pass along to him what I've learned in my life. You know, pass along to this new generation of Barrys. And I'm thinking, what have I learned? What do I actually know that I really believe is true and worth passing along? And the only thing I could come up with, of all the things I've learned in my life, is you don't need to refrigerate ketchup. Or mustard, really. And a lot of people do. How many of you refrigerate your ketchup or mustard? Okay, you're morons. And I say that because you go into any restaurant, and where's the ketchup and mustard? It's on the table. It's been there for days, weeks, months, right? Decades in some restaurants. That's fine. So, but that was my wisdom. Okay, so that's it. That's a quick run through of the essays in the book. There's some other stuff, but I'll skip. We have time for questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's. Yeah.
You were born in 1947.
Thank you.
Yes. You were born in 1947.
I was born in 1947. That's not really a question, but yes.
That means you're going to be 68.
I'm 67. I'll be 68 on July 3rd.
So I'm 66. So how do you have
You loser.
your youthful appearance and your
Well, I don't have a real haircut. I think maybe the secret. I don't know. I always looked young when I was a kid. Well. I'm almost 18 in this photograph. Okay? So I'm years from puberty at this point. I still have no hair on my arms at all. Okay? So I don't know. And also, I don't have a real haircut, and it's not anybody's fault. I mean, I've tried to have normal haircut, and I can't. My hair is extremely straight, or something. It's the same hairstyle as a coconut. When I started this book tour, I was in New York, and I did a TV show, and they took me to the makeup room. They always make you put and they put the makeup on, and then I walked out past the makeup, and I walked past the hair room, and I wasn't going to stop. I'm walking past, and this woman comes out and goes, "Do you need me to do something with your hair?" And I go, "No, I'm good." And she goes, "No, you're not." She brings me in and sprays this stuff and everything for like a brief period of time, I looked like a grown-up. You know, my hair was kind of going sideways, you know, but no. So I can never be an airline pilot for this reason. People get on and say, no, you know. If the Labrador Retriever were sitting in that, you know, pilot seat, they'd be more likely to take off than with a person with this haircut. So, yes.
Aside from having your book appear on the Johnny Carson show, how did you get started selling humor? Because my feeling is it's hard.
How did I get started selling humor? Because your feeling is it's hard. It was very gradual. I always wanted to write funny, you know, but I never thought of it as a career. And when I was in high school, I wrote, you know, humor columns for my high school paper. I wrote humor columns for my college paper. Although I went back to my college reunion, like my 20th or 25th, and somebody, this is after I'd become an established columnist, somebody had gone back and found all my columns from the Haverford College News and blown them up big and put them all around the gym where we were having the dance. So there's all my columns. And I don't remember going around reading them, and like I didn't get any of the jokes. But we did a lot of drugs then, so maybe that was why. But anyway, so I got out of college and I got a job at a newspaper, but I was not as a humorist. I mean, I was a reporter, and I went to, you know, I covered municipal meetings that are probably still going on, you know, obituaries and fires and stuff like that. But on this, at this little paper, it's called the Daily Local News in Westchester, Pennsylvania, real small time. How small time, you ask? We once ran a headline, I'm not kidding, it said, "Woman beats off would-be rapist." One page, Daily Local News headline. So anyway, but you could write, if you wanted to, you could write a column there. They let, you know, it was like anybody could do anything at that paper. And so I started writing a weekly humor column, but it wasn't what I was hired to do. Eventually I left the paper and I did other things, but I kept writing that column for them. And I'd say I wrote maybe 5 years before a second paper got interested. And gradually I got bigger papers to start reading my stuff and running it. I would mail, you know, I'd cut it out and send it off and mostly get rejections. So I was in my 30s before I actually got offered a job to write humor full time. So it was a slow process, which probably was good because I wrote a lot of probably terrible columns before I was able to consistently produce ones that they wanted to actually publish. So I'm always telling people, like, I don't know how you do it, you know, because I didn't really ever try to do it. It's sort of, you know, I kept writing when I could, but that was never how I supported myself, not until I was in my 30s. Yes? Yeah?
My family and I were huge fans of the whole bad song contest when you read it. I was wondering if, in your opinion, music has gotten better or worse in the era.
Hey, you're asking, I wrote a book called The Book of Bad Songs. Back in the early 90s, where it all got started with a Neil Diamond thing. This wasn't meant to be the point of the column, but I wrote a column where I happened to mention that maybe Neil Diamond was not the greatest lyricist who ever lived. You have to be careful. I was particularly referring to a song where Neil Diamond sings with great intensity and passion. I said, no one there, and no one heard it all. Not even the chair. That was his rhyme, you know. Why not Smokey the Bear? There's gotta be a better rhyme than that, you know. Because my feeling was like, yeah, it didn't hear you because it's a chair, Neil. It's a piece of furniture. Probably the table didn't pick up on it either, you know. So I wrote, that was not the point of the column, but I got this angry response from the Neil Diamond people. Like, you think Salman Rushdie got in trouble. And they just horrible, you know, really mean emails to me, not me, this was back before email, mean letters to me. So that inspired me to write another column. So the Neil Diamond people were really unhappy with this. And I quoted their letters, and that got a whole counter reaction because all the people who agreed with me about that song and wanted to talk about other songs they didn't like. And so then I wrote another column about that, and then there's set up a tidal wave of letters, but songs people don't like. People say Americans don't care about the issues, but this is the issue people care about it. And so I ended up writing that book, the Book of Bad Songs, where people voted, and the winning song, or losing, depending how you look at it, was MacArthur Park. Someone loved it. Followed by Yummy, 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 I've Got Love in My Tummy, and Having My Baby, which is by either Neil Diamond or Paul Anka. No, Paul Anka or Neil Sedaka. And nobody can tell them apart. Even the DNA testing. So I can't remember your question. Oh yeah, what about music now? Well, I don't think you can do that book anymore, because in the 90s people were still basically listening to the same radio stations, whatever. Now it's so fragmented because people all listen online and listen all different ways. I do think there's some good songs, but there's a lot of horrible songs. When I drive my daughter's soccer carpool is when I really hear this. There's this 15-year-old girls, like 5, 6 of them, and they're all texting and listening to music really loud. That's what and I'm driving, trying not to listen. But every now and then I'll notice what kind of song they're listening to. And these are good girls. They really are. They're nice girls, they're polite. But the songs are all about butts. You know? The other day, they're like texting away, and the song is called Back That Ass Up. You know? Back that ass up. And I know it's wrong to let them listen to it, but if I hit another station, it would also be playing Back That Ass Up. They listen to like 3 songs, these girls. So anyway, I don't think music has improved, let me put it down. Yes?
Do you still write a syndicated column?
Do I still write a syndicated column? No, I do not. I stopped about 10 years ago. I think I still write as much, he said defensively, but it tends to take the form of longer essays and books. And I'm getting the nod.
You can do whatever you want.
Well, okay, soon
How about one more?
One more, I'll take one more question. Yes, way in the back, sir.
Well, this kind of relates to that. When you had the syndicated column, you were one of the 3 funniest people in the newspaper, along with Gary Larson and Bill Watterson. When did you realize that the internet was going to drastically change, and that anybody who had basically an opinion and thought themselves funny could have a column that way? Did you have a moment where you realized that there was going to be a big change in how you did what you did?
Yeah, I kind of sensed that was happening, and I got mocked some because I was saying 10 years ago, I don't think the newspaper business is in for a good, it's just not working out well for the newspaper business. And it's sad, but people don't read news. Most of the people in this room, I'm guessing, based on the fact that we're all old, let's be honest, still read the newspaper, but there's like a cliff, a demographic cliff. And on the other side of that, they don't read the newspaper. They just don't. They don't buy it. They don't expect to buy it. They expect it to be free online, whatever. And we haven't figured out what to do about it, because unfortunately the newspaper business is an industry run by English majors. And if anything we can get wrong, we manage to get it wrong. So that's kind of a sad way to end it. But that is my. You're right. Anybody now can get on and get an audience and whatever. And in some ways, that's good, I think. But when people come to me and say, "Hey, I want to get started as a columnist," I say, "Well, yeah, but you're not really going to be able to do it in a newspaper anymore. You're going to have to do it by tweeting a lot." Which people have done. People have actually turned those things into careers, and God bless them if they can. But it's not the way it was when I started. It was like Art Buchwald and Irma Bombeck and Russell Baker and Mike Royko and Art Hoppe. These were the people who had been. Sorry? Gene Weingart. Well, he was my editor, but he came along after me. And now that avenue is pretty much closed, and boy, this is what a depressing end is this. Is there any heroin? Well, anyway, I don't know what the plan is now, so I'll turn the microphone back. But thank you all really for coming out.